Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself George bringing a brand new review, and today I'm going to be talking about Giant, which has just had its world premiere at London Film Festival and is going to be releasing on the 9th of January here in the UK. I am here to give my thoughts on the film, having seen it earlier this week at London Film Festival. Of course, it being a boxing film starring Brosnan. I'm excited to talk about this one as I love doing sports films on the channel pretty much. So with that in mind, let's go to the BFI descriptions. I give you the details if you're unfamiliar with this or its release. Amir, El-Masry and Brosnan star in the thrilling real-life story of world champion boxer Prince Naseem and his trainer Brendan Ingle. Now, a bit of context going into this film. I do not have a background in boxing or knowledge of boxing. I didn't know anything about the two real-life characters, or I'm aware of the story. My limited knowledge of boxing is very minimal. My knowledge of boxing is pretty much the Rocky films, which is worth mentioning that it is exec produced by Sylvester Stallone, and there are very much some techniques in this which may be more comparable to the Rocky films than other boxing films that have been done historically. So I will get into that as much as I can. But I guess I should say as well, I was excited to see this. This was the last film I saw at the festival. Obviously, review schedule-wise, I'm doing it first to get it up with the premiere. It's an interesting one heading into it. So it's directed by Rowan Athale, who I've also not seen any of his two previous films. He's also the writer of this as well. As I said, I'm very unfamiliar with the subject matter, so it was quite nice to go into this, having seen nothing except one still on the internet. It doesn't happen too much at some of the festivals when you have such limited information. It's great to do so. Obviously, with it having a world premiere here, there's even less than there would be for other films we're going to cover throughout the festival. So when I have a biopic approach that has this, and I'll talk about this with a few reviews over the next coming sort of 8-9 days, I like to be informed. And that sounds really stupid, but if I know nothing, I would like to come out of the film having been told a story of certain characters or what it specifically is about, have more of an understanding of them, and want to be put in a way in which I research them, can look into it to find whether there's a bit of authenticity or if it's gone the other way in doing so, i.e. the Freddie Mercury film. So it's quite simple, my, not expectations, but my approach to these. And I do like sports films. I've always enjoyed sports films, so again, from a sports perspective, great. Please educate me on something I do not know, because I'd like to know a little bit more about that. And my initial thoughts are the film does a great job of being a sports film at telling the story of Naseem Hamed. That right there is off the go crystal to talk about. I think it does a better story of telling you about Brendan Ingle, a former professional fighter who would go on to train children in Sheffield, and essentially build up one of the best managers the British Isles have ever produced in terms of boxing, because he'd go on to raise many other boxing world champions that come on in history. Most people will be more familiar with Jay Kell. So yeah, it functions as a biopic for two individuals, and it successfully informs me of those two individuals. But if I start trying to narrow down maybe what works and didn't work for me, I'm going to kickstart the performances. Amir, El-Masry plays Naseem Hamed. This is an actor I haven't seen in anything before. It was my first time seeing him in this, and I have to say he has a very unique presence in this film. Obviously, with it being a biopic, we see Naseem from a young age of 7, the first time he's took to the gym to be trained, all the way through up until the end of his professional career. So we do have multiple actors playing the role. With the adult Amir, I think there's the adult Naseem, Amir's got a lot of personality with him, and with the character himself being a showman of the sport. When I spoke to my dad about him, asked if he remembers anything from the 90s with it, he just said that he was a tosser. And the film does a phenomenal job at developing the on-screen relationship with him, with audiences, the tribulations he's faced before him that made him the person he is now. He is a showman, and very much in the 90s, what did happen with boxing, which has happened with UFC, so many other things, it became as much a show as it did about the boxing. You've got obviously Frank Warren involved in the promoting it. I think his performance is good in this film. Whether it be regarded as his breakthrough film or I'm just too unfamiliar with it, I can absolutely see him working on a lot more things. I thought he played the role well. When he was in the ring well, I thought he was good. One of my criticisms is the fight choreography didn't feel very impactful. I know we've just had the Smashing Machine out. That's a completely different sport, a completely different film in itself. But that felt raw and authentic when they're in the ring. The boxing almost felt like a presentation, which we know from his character he did do a lot of that. But I wish when it got in the ring, something shifted. It just never really made that. It felt fairly safe in the ring. Okay, maybe we kind of knew what the outcomes would be, and that's okay. But from the boxing perspective, I wasn't too bothered with that. But it isn't really telling the story of what's going on in the ring. It's more the battle between Brendan and Naseem. And that kind of leads me talking to Pierce Brosnan's character of Brendan Ingle, who I loved in this. I'm a guy of simple taste. I see Pierce Brosnan. I like it. I will watch a lot of the films he does. He's one of my favourite actors. He will always be my James Bond, which I would always say. And even in a wig with fake teeth, he looks phenomenal. I'm just going to say that now. God knows how good he'll look at the premiere. But it's one of his better roles I've seen him in recent years, if I'm allowed to say so. Playing Brendan Ingle, the Irish trainer who had a background in boxing. The film does a great job at presenting him as trying to live his life through Naseem and clutching into their relationship, that he was his manager from an early age, but he had an incentive to be involved at an early age too, that he did believe in him, that he saw in him that he would go on to be great, and he stuck with that. And I think it successfully does that. You've also got a character dealing with not the failures of his past, but the fact that he didn't make it to the level that his student would go on to be. So it does a good job at developing that, and how coaches can be thrown away, managers can be thrown away, and the issues that has with them being discarded as such. So the film does a good job at telling their relationship. I won't give too much on the real life stuff, because if you're unfamiliar like me, you will find out a lot through this. There is one scene that really didn't work for me, which is the penultimate scene of the film, unfortunately. But I think there's an intention behind that. I'm also going to talk about Frank Warren, the real life person, being played by Toby Stephens. And yes, James Bond fans, that is true. Toby Stephens and Pierce Brosnan have reunited for a film together following Die Another Day. When I saw the opening scene and I clocked that was Toby Stephens, I just had this ridiculous smile on my face, because I just knew, okay, we might have a Die Another Day reunion here. And then when we're getting outright scenes of Brosnan and Toby Stephens together, I was just smiling the whole time. I loved it. I will say, performance-wise, Toby Stephens does a great job at Frank Warren. He's got the teeth, the face, the arrogance. And obviously Toby Stephens, I don't know if I can call him an underrated actor. I think he's a great actor. I think people know he's a great actor. But his projects, they're not as commercially driven as people may go on to expect with him. But he's always had a bit of personality. And again, this James Bond and family is sat there thinking there's James Bond and Gustav Groves once more. You know, he lived to die another day. You can insert your own puns. That made the film for me. I know that's weird to say when it's a biopic, it's so completely unrelated. I hope they've got a photo together at the world premiere to talk about. But yes, they're the sort of three core characters it does. I've got to talk about a couple of things that didn't work for me. As much as I did enjoy this film and I did like this film, there's a couple things where I've got to get a bit more serious now, which I don't think the film did well. First one, the background of Naseem Hamed, being the children of Yemeni immigrants, 1980s Britain. There's a lot of racism involved, name-calling, background, stuff that did happen that continues to happen today. But in the sports environment, the old boys clubs, that sort of stuff, we see the struggles he had to go through to break down those barriers to have the career he did. But I felt it was too service level at that point. I really wish, and maybe this is somewhat psychotic of me, the impact that would have had on a child would be very strong. Yes, the film displays him laughing his way through those to prove them wrong in the ring, that he's a great fighter, but that would have had an impact on him, and I did wish the film explored his personal life a little bit more away from it. It's just very generic with that stuff, and then you've got the family relationship, contract issues, financial incentives, the usual stuff you get with biopics. It was just, some of it was too service level, and more particularly the thematics of the racism in it, because the impact that has on children, and would still today, to go down those barriers to be the first British Muslim boxing champion, I think it could have done a better job at going into that more. I'd have liked to have known more about his family relationships, his life at home. Whilst the core of the story is about Naseem and Brendan Ingle, we are missing that when it speaks about the fact Brendan almost raised him, is always with him. We do get that in scenes, but there should have been more of a family dynamic because the parents play a big role later on in the film, and it doesn't feel earned at that point in time. As I said, it's a good film, it's a likeable film, but it is service level, but it does function as a biopic. And as someone that's unfamiliar with Prince Naz, as he's called, his ring names, his jokes, his antics, I felt like coming away having learned a little bit more. I enjoyed it. That's what it is. And this is kind of where I go with recommendation for this film. Should you see it at cinemas when it comes out in January? I don't know is the correct answer. I don't know what's coming out around the same time as it, so that never really helps. I like to sort of compare what's out, see what should and shouldn't be seen. But I think if you're a fan of boxing, this is one for you. Maybe if you're from Sheffield, it does really do a lot for Sheffield as a region. Probably the most since the Full Monty does in terms of films being set there. You absolutely should be. Ironically, the next one we're going to review is also set in Sheffield, which we'll talk about tomorrow. But I'm recommending it. Yeah, it's one to see. I don't know how well it will perform. If you're a Bond fan, you're going to go because I've just said there's Die Another Day reunion. But I would be surprised with it being such a niche film. I don't know how it would translate to general audiences. I don't know how it will translate to boxing fans. I'm sure there'll be comments by people like Frank Warren in the coming days, weeks, months. Of course, the main character too. So it's a bit of an awkward one for me to recommend. If I'm honest, but I said I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film. I think there's things to enjoy from it. It's certainly very watchable. It's just whether it does the right balance of do you need to see this film. That I do not know, and you can only answer that question yourself. So that is me rounding out on this review. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope I didn't go too off tangent there at the end. You might be wondering what is next on the channel. We're still doing our daily London Film Festival reviews. I will be reviewing Anemone next, which is the Daniel Day-Lewis film, which is the one I mentioned that's set in Sheffield, also starring Sean Bean, Samantha Morton. That review is going to go up tomorrow. That's going to be one to talk about. But yes, this was my review for Giant. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.